Okay. Hello. It's Dr. Abby here. Um, in the last three or so of my videos, I've said I will not be sort of talking about one thing, because the world we are living in is a world that is so um sick, and so much is going on, and you never quite know what you're going to be talking about next, or you never quite know what is happening. But for me, it's the pain. I don't come here as a political commentator. Sometimes what I touch does for and that, but my aim is just to talk about being human. And as a disabled person, um it's more important to raise some of these issues because obviously I fall under the group of vulnerable people, and across the world there are vulnerable people, vulnerable children, women, men, the elderly, who are living in very harsh conditions because of wars, and some of them really are necessary. So I always find myself being dragged in, subconsciously there, because it's something that I know can feel worse. And as I said before, I was once an able-bodied person who acquired disability, and I know what I lost, the independence I used to have, and now I just have to rely on on other people, and also on sort of the mess. I mean, the mess of other people's hands, and sometimes you can't help it. So when I imagine this happening in a war zone, or in a place where this sort of under control of a foreign government, I just know that the conditions would even be worse for these people. But the one thing that I want to talk about, I think I talked about domestic violence, in its forms: physical, mental abuse, financial, and other forms of it, physiological and psychological, and sexual as well, which is obviously shocking, with what we are hearing about people watching videos of men raping their wives while they are sort of comatose state, which again is very much like, where is the world going? Were these things happening before? At some point, how are these people manifesting or doing these things? But anyway, I'm not going to dig into that. I just wanted to talk about how horrified I was to see. Okay, so when I watch news, I've learned the hard way that there are news channels that are considered traditionally, or have been considered traditionally, as impartial, the voice of reason, informative, transformative, you name it. And one of those is the BBC, because I used to see the BBC news when I was in Africa, before I came to the UK. But lately, I'm now just seeing blatant bias. And sometimes when you're busy, you don't think much about, what you see. You kind of find local news, or there's been a murder there, or the government is doing A, B, C, D. Then it's just like you go on about your merry way. But lately, because of the wars, the genocidal wars that are around the world, it's very difficult to not want to hear what's happening and who is doing what. So I do have a sweep of watching the news, not sitting and digging deep, because I know digging deep is not gonna come from any news platform. I have to do the digging deep elsewhere. So yes, I do sweep through. I would sweep through Sky News, the BC News, then sometimes ITV, some Channel 4, then I move CNN, France News 24, and Al Jazeera. And it's just amazing how certain facts are portrayed and sometimes are not, because I think if news is being chosen by how good it looks or sounds, and how much it goes in line with one country and the other, then to me, that's not news. That is some form of propaganda. Why I'm saying this is I was speaking to a friend who visited me last weekend. We were talking about what's happening, and she was saying, "Oh, the BBC News has to exist." And I agree, it has to exist. Really, we need the BBC, and we do not. I do not at any point think it should be taken down. And I was also joining people who were sort of supporting the BBC when it was when it was being sued by Donald Trump, because I just even said, even from where I come from, the Herald, Zimbabwean Herald, if a foreign country threatens to wipe it out, no matter how pro-state it is, I'll still be disappointed that a foreign country or a foreign entity or foreign power is coming in to attack what we call our own sort of media. So yes, I do agree that no one should attack, like attack by taking out any of our news platforms. But I also would not say that they were really impartial when it comes to sharing news or sharing facts or reporting on war. And I know they try not to take sides because that is what they are supposed to do. But I would rather they put all the news out there and let people decide. And I say to my friend, when my friend is British, and she's white, so she said, well, and I said, well, they're doing their best. I said, actually, I do not think so, because I know there is a sort of genocidal war in Sudan. I do not see it. There is stuff happening in the DR Congo. I don't see it on the news. If I see them, if they are showing the good side, like they showed Yvette Cooper there walking up and down, talking to people, or they show some attempt that there are negotiations or something, but they never actually show the suffering of the people on ground, the starvation of people on ground, and also the needs for these people. And that is Africa, that is in Sudan. It's happening as we speak. And then when I look at what's happening or what has happened in Gaza, we know there's a ceasefire, but the ceasefire still has people being killed and by Israeli soldiers, and we hear that they are going to move to phase 2, and you're thinking, well, but we haven't seen phase 1 really working. How can you move to phase 2? And why move when the other one is? And because this was like, oh, we'll see how it happens. And obviously this is not beyond BBC, but they do not show the number of people that are being killed almost on daily basis by Israeli soldiers, and these people, they are children, they are women. I saw the last one I saw, it was women and 3 children. So we don't see this being reported, because these are the things that we need to know. We need to know that, oh, that's that was it 21 or 20 point strategy that was put in by the Board of Peace and all that Trump was talking about. We need to know that actually it's working, because wherever there's a war, I think most normal human beings would want peace. I don't think anyone would sit at home saying, oh yeah, let that war continue, let people die. We all want peace. And I think people pray for peace and want peace, or would want to talk about peace, So I don't see these things being sort of reported. It's like we've moved on. So does the BBC not have journalists there who could just be showing these killings that are still, these murdering of people that is still going on? We do not even see the state of how people are living there, because we know how damaged it was during the war, and it's still being damaged, but we still don't go back, because there are people who rely on the BBC, in the world, in parts of the world that are remote. They just want to know. They want to know. They don't want, no one wants to wake up and be told that actually part of this world is no longer there or is disappeared. People want to know what's happening around the world. In small villages, people would know about what's happening with their neighbor, but they would also want to know about what's happening around the world. And I do not think the BBC is doing this very well. And if it's doing it, it's being selective. So it jumps from here, it jumps from there, it jumps from there, it goes to America, it shows this, but there is not really a clear attempt for me, or as far as I'm concerned, to show the after effects of the so-called phase 1 of the peace in Gaza. Because when I then go to Al Jazeera, I see they've got a sort of a running sort of number to a number of people running or flashing on their news channel about how many people have died in Gaza since that ceasefire, and they also show the numbers of people that have been killed in Lebanon. So when you look at the news, you see those numbers flashing. You're like, okay, my goodness, this is bad. But then you have the opportunity to try and verify it elsewhere. But you are also kept informed. So you decide by yourself, you get to think about this as an individual. Even if you want to dig deeper, you would do that, but at least you have got something to start from or to start with. But with the BBC, no, I do not see these numbers being quoted. I do not hear anything about it. Obviously, I'm not there 24/7, but I will not click on the BBC News and say, oh my God, look, the number of the death in this equals to this or they are this. And to me, not only in Gaza, but obviously I mentioned Africa. They show Ukraine. So Lebanon, obviously they do show it, but I do not think they make an effort to really expose all facts so that people can actually see what's happening. And I find that disturbing. Because like they're afraid of someone, but they can say this of another person, but they're actually afraid of someone. And having said that, I feel like the whole Western media, as well as Western leaders, I don't know what stance they're trying to take about what's happening in the world. And I put in some sort of, the West were very good in conquering the world. The Berlin conference, where they sort of mapped out who gets what of Africa. They were in India. They were like all over the world. They were powerful. And they were in control. You would think they were in control. You'd think they knew what they were doing. You'd think they had better democracy than the rest of the world. And at some point I do believe the rest of the world looked upon Western democracies and Western models to really model their governments, because it was considered to be good. But when I look at it now, where is the Western world when children are dying in Gaza and being murdered, and in Lebanon and in Iran? It's like no one says anything other than, the Prime Minister of the UK is going to phone or have a conversation with the President of France and this and that. So there's no clear. It's like they don't have direction. And with what Trump has done and what he may be doing with NATO, it's like the Western world has just decided to pack it in and do absolutely nothing. And I am just, they failed with Ukraine, which obviously is in Europe, but it seems they've now completely failed to look at what's happening in other countries. I know France get involved when there's a coup d'etat or something close to a coup. France quickly gets involved with the former French colonies that apparently they are still controlling one or the other. But for the rest of the what's happening now in the Middle East, it's like no one wants to do anything. They don't even want to mention the atrocities for what they really are. They keep on saying Iran must end the war. Iran must. I've heard it from IMF. I've read it from so many people. I've heard it from Yvette Cooper. I've heard it like Iran must end the war. Iran must end. But that's not how you end aggressiveness, because Iran did not start the war. That's a fact. We all know that's a fact. Iran is apparently or has been planning to attack for the last 47 years. Or I don't know why it didn't happen the last, when it was only 20 years in or 10 years in. But apparently they had to wait until 47 years. And even with that, they didn't start the war. I'm not on anyone's side. I'm just observing that it's weird how the elephant in the room is not being talked about. People are circling it. People are talking about economic catastrophe. People are talking of all sorts, but they seem not to just say, this time America just didn't plan and they didn't know what they are doing. They just jumped in a war they assumed was going to end very quickly. Same Vietnam style, go in with a few Marines, and before you know it is a full-blown war. It's like they are doing the same thing. And it's like America, with its superpower, obviously we know that they are powerful. It's like they never learn. So if you think you have what it takes to destroy the world, or powerful war machine, you've got the military, you've got the strong military, you do not think that maybe the ones you're trying to fight may not easily hand over their country. Because honestly speaking, no matter how bad a country is or can be, when it comes to sovereignty, each country wants, each country has its own pride, let's say. Even small countries. That's why some people even fight for sovereignty, like what happened to Sudan. It got divided into South Sudan and Sudan, because people were like, no, we are who we are. So every country has its own pride. Even poor countries, even hell or shit countries like Trump would like to say, they have their pride as countries. So nobody would enjoy or would want just someone coming in and bulldozing and taking this and that and say thank you for doing this to our country. I do not think so, and unless the people have got an ulterior motive. But I think most people like to, if they take their government, they want to, I would think people would want to take their governments themselves rather than, or if you get help, you want help that comes and goes. You don't want to help that then say, by the way, we'll take your oil as well while we are at it. Or you have gold. Yeah, we'll take it while we are at it as well. That's now a different type of, and I don't think that is liked by anybody. So the West has been so silent, like really. I think this week they had a meeting and it was like informal. There's just nothing coming out of it. It's like they have to be seen to be doing something. And I don't know whether this is the sort of deteriorating of the Western powers. I just don't know, because since Trump threatened taking over Greenland, since Trump went into Venezuela, Iran, they just been shifting. Maybe we need to build an EU army, or maybe each country has to, or maybe it's just never as straightforward. And I guess one would say they would not be able to do much if they failed to make a sort of anything towards Russia for Ukraine. They would hardly be really thinking about something when it comes to the Middle East. But the problem is, if this goes on, then we are going to have an economic catastrophe, and that's going to affect the whole world. Which is why I think people who should be um, thinking about ceasefire negotiations should not be also joining the rhetoric of Donald Trump. Because if let's say Europe would like to there to be peace, they would like there to be a ceasefire, they would like life to go back to what it was before. They shouldn't be like, yeah, the Ayatollahs, they are bad people, they kill their own people. Yeah, so that way they are actually helping Donald Trump's narrative. Instead, they should be like, okay, we know this regime is A, B, C, D. So what do we need to do? We need to sit on the table with the regime, and then maybe negotiate with them on their human rights, history, or whatever it is that people are complaining about. Because if you throw in insults, well, for some it may work, but I think the more insults people are throwing, the more likely the Iranians are going to fight back, because we know they have, and I've seen video, sort of some sort of Lego video stuff on mocking Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump and the administration. I've seen that. That's being done to try and sort of fight back, but in a classy way, because they're like, no, we don't go your way of throwing insults, calling us this. We do this sort of educated way, unlike you who do the barbaric way, and you also use insults which are undignified. We just go through it by calling out your actions. So some of the video they show Peter Hegseth's Lego body drinking, and beer sort of splashing out and all that. Obviously, it's also teaching us that we operate sometimes, especially when we are far apart and we don't read about other countries, we operate on false narratives. Out goes the fact that, they are barbaric, they are not educated, they know nothing. Actually, they are educated people, just like anywhere else in the world. I used to say that to people when I first came here to the UK, that you want me to prove what exactly? That I did a master's degree, which kind of English literature, which is really more in depth, as far as I'm concerned, more in depth than what I see here. What do you want to know? Because people always think like the Western world is the best, and we are also to blame, because we, I came here to do my master's and my PhD. We always think the West is best educational system, they've got this, they've got, but I believe that if we were to really look at, and obviously the measurement of who is done by Western through a Western lenses. So we tend to think that some of the education that is offered out there, or people out there, are not educated enough. But on the contrary, they actually are, and they can be people who could be more educated than people in the West, and who are even clever. So you cannot measure how intelligent people are by where they come from. That's not how intelligence works. That you come from England, so you have to be intelligent, or you come from America, so you have to be intelligent. Doesn't work like that. And now we are seeing it, how the Iranians are fighting in a more dignified way than insults on Truth Social, or I don't know, in a sort of press release. So it's very, very difficult to try diplomacy that way. Okay, some people say it works, but I think it works if the person you're dealing with is a weakling. But if you're dealing with a country that has its dignity to maintain, and that is also as proud and also as capable, I think insults will be just like nothing. And like I said, they fight back with something even more dignified, more classy, more put together, because these Lego things they're doing, it shows that they are IT knowledgeable, and all that, and their thinkers, they're not just like people who are barbaric. So it's showing a lot of weaknesses, I think, as far as I'm concerned, um, in the sort of international community. Because before, people used to say, oh, we look up the international community to come and help us to sort of observe the human rights. Human rights are being sort of violated. And of course, the West would intervene, or I don't know, issue a statement or sanctions or boycott of this or stop selling guns or something, something that would show that the West are involved and they care about the people on the ground. But we do not see any of that at the moment. Okay. And I think that is a telling sign in 2026, because the world, the world at large, used to rely on Western support in terms of when there's war, when there is violation of human rights, in every form. When people used to rely on that, but now it's all gone. It's like people have just to learn to fight for their own corner and fight for themselves, like what Iran is doing. Because so for me, like as an observer, we cannot say, oh, Iran is the Iranian government is bad. They are really, they oppress their people. They've got the death sentence. They've got, it may be true. I do not know. It may be true. It may be very well true. But let's also not be hypocritical when it comes to what is also being done in Palestine, in Lebanon, and in Iran. Not by Iran, but by America and Israel. Because I don't think this generation or many of us will forget the pictures that we saw in Gaza of people, of little children fighting to get food to eat on daily basis, running away from bombs and never making it. I don't think we'll be like, oh, that never happened. That will stay with most generations in generations to come. And I don't know how they're going to judge us, because those things are still happening. Even in Gaza, where there's talk of civil war, as I said before, it's still happening. And where is the critique? Where is the rage? Where is, oh my God, look, this should not be happening. We are worried more about what's happening in Iran. But that has not even been verified. Okay, I do not know, because Iranian government said no, we didn't put anyone on death sentence. We didn't kill anybody. And there are various stories that are coming from there that maybe those people who were demonstrating in January were like forced people who were sent in to cause that, to try and start this thing of getting the Ayatollah out. It may be true, it may not be true. But what I'm just saying is, if there's rage for death of a group of people in one country, let that rage not be only on the one country that we choose, but also for everywhere there's killings, for everywhere life is being lost. Life is being lost every day in Sudan. Life is being lost in the DRC Congo. Life is being lost in Iran, Palestine. So let the rage be across the board, because we are talking of the same life that is human life. Infrastructure and all the things that have been grounded. So that's the only problem I have, and I know when there was what was obviously apartheid in South Africa. When people got to know about what was happening in South Africa, there were so many activities, or there were so many things that were done to try and sort of force the government to stop the war. There were boycotts, people not buying South Africa. There was just so much that was taking place. But I don't see that. I do not see that with the crisis in the Middle East. Life goes on, but again, I'm only saying this not as a politician or as someone who is on anyone's side, but I'm just saying it as a human being, because from my lenses as a Black woman and disabled woman, I feel helpless, because I think of the disabled people in all this, the vulnerable, the young, the sick, the one relying on medication, different types. That's what gives me the sort of energy to try and talk about these things. Whether they are making a difference or not, I do not know, because there are many people who have been saying this, who are still saying this, and who will be saying this. So I just feel like instead of me getting frustrated, I also need to just say, maybe hope that one day things will be okay for everyone. Except obviously there are people, innocent people who have already died, or whose lives could have been prevented if really the West was to put their act together and get involved. They were involved in creating this chaos. This is not like something that just happened because it was just a natural country that existed, and then now this was created by Britain, France, and now they're like, oh, we want Iran to stop the war. The chaos that they created then, you see, these guys, they thought they were so clever. They would just divide, cut in pieces without thinking of the different groups of people who existed. And now, of course they are now like, oh, this is not, definitely, we are not, this is not us. You better sort yourself out. And as long as it's not happening to our people, as long as it's not our people who are dying, we are okay. Just in a way, oh, it's good. British soldiers are not going to go there. But what about the soldiers in that country where they created chaos? Because obviously the issue of Iran, it did not start in 2023, or like, this has been something that came after. We talk about going back after the Second World War, and maybe before then, but things are just not what they are, not because these countries were existing and independently, and then somehow his neighboring countries' war broke out. This is something that was man-made and created, and of course years later the people who were involved are not there anymore, and now it's causing more and more hatred, more and more destruction, more and more. But these things were not thought of before. The same with the Sudan issue. South Sudan only just came into being, and then people are fighting, warlord against warlord, because again there are other little things that are coming up. So it's never easy. It's never easy for anyone to meddle in another country, because if you meddle, you can meddle, you may meddle, and then it may look like it's worked, or it may look peaceful. But we're talking about human beings with their own pride and all that. So obviously things would just come out later, and then history will look back, oh, this war, this Balfour, this was signing between, it's going back. But what do you pick up from things that were done 80 years ago? Would you deal with it? Because no one is going to come to the table and say, oh, actually that time we made a mistake, so let's try and fix it now. No one will do that. So it's just creating more chaos even in future, because no matter how it's going now, maybe there's, maybe some states may disappear. I do not know, but I just feel like if you create something by fighting a group of people, they will still somehow want to fight back, even maybe not in the immediate future, but in the near future, they may want to take back what they believe is theirs, or remove people that they think do not belong. But having said all that, I just want to talk about the violence against men. I know I'm mixing, which is why I said it's very difficult to stick to one thing now. As people used to do, you'd talk about one thing and then that's it. News clip, that's it. But now it's just so mixed up, and for some of us who care, you just feel like you want to stand there and say, please just stop, it's time to stop. I saw a clip that was on Al Jazeera, and remember I talked about how we do not get to see certain things on BBC News or the other news channels. On Al Jazeera, I saw a man who was captured by IDF, and he told of a harrowing story that IDF soldiers used dogs to rape him. I thought by international law, if you capture someone, you keep them, because even during Second World War, people suffered, people were made to build this, and that was why the international law came about, to say, actually, when you capture people, they have to be treated with respect until a peace or something, and they go back. But this man they used dogs on a man to humiliate, and I can't even say humiliate. It's more than humiliation. This should not be happening. What type of soldier? What type of training would a soldier like that would have been given? Because at what point do you like to watch that happening to another person, unless your mind is also like that? Because I do not think I'd be cruel enough to want to see something if it does not make me feel good, because you wouldn't go that just for the sake of being cruel, but you do that because you enjoy watching it. Because it's not like they were doing this, having the dog rapes, and then they were looking the other way. They were there watching. So to me, they are showing their true colors. They're showing the world who they really are, that they are not soldiers, they're not moral soldiers. They are rogues. They are not soldiers. I don't think any soldier will be trained like that. Otherwise, that uniform is worthless. That's when you see a man in uniform, even if you are lost, you are in a different time. You see a man in uniform. Oh, let me ask this gentleman. Let me ask, if it's a policeman, if it's a fireman, or whatever. If you feel you trust a man in uniform, and even in war, you think, okay, they're just doing what pertains to the war, but not the extra bits. But imagine abusing another man, using an animal and watching. Then so to me, these men are just evil soldiers who are operating and wearing a uniform, and they should not be soldiers. They should not have been soldiers. Who are these people who train people to do things like that? That's not fighting. That's not combat. That's just like some barbaric stuff. And it's not the only men that's story about it. I also have watched on Al Jazeera people being interviewed saying they were even abused using bottles. There was one who said they used fire extinguisher, and this was to a man. So many things. But so instead of news outlets in reporting these barbaric things, they just give us, the Strait of Hormuz or Iran is stopping the ships from crossing, or Iran must stop this before the war. causes chaos in the economic world, and we have another recession. Okay, what about the human rights? What about all these people who are abused on daily basis? How about the ones who are already in prison, who are under Israeli in sort of hands in prison? Should we not be seeing all this? Because war, war. When I think war, I think human rights, human beings. Okay, oil and food, and they come later. At the moment, I'm not thinking, oh my God, there's not going to be oil. Oh my God, there's not going to be food. I'm thinking, oh my God, how bad it is for those human beings who are under this. So we do not see these things. Then we happen to see clips maybe from, our journalists that are working at Al Jazeera that are showing us. And you don't see it on BBC News. Why? You don't see it on Sky News. Why? I think there's something wrong within the system. Because look, last summer, there were those flotillas with the Greta Thunberg and other activists who went with to try and provide food to people in the Gaza Strip. And they were attacked on the way, and we kind of, we hope food and medication gets there. We hope food and medication gets to people. Because you think people, I do not think, oil prices, or I do think about that. But at the moment, I'm thinking, are people getting food? Are they getting what need people to survive? The ones who have survived bombs, surely they have to have food. They are walking from point A to point B. Surely they need food to be able to do that. Because how can you then run away? Or if they say, Israel said, okay, move from that town, let's go to, because we are going to attack, we think Hezbollah this, so we are going to attack, so move. Oh, what happens when you're hungry? We all know hunger. We all know hunger of one day. Maybe some of us have never done hunger for even a day or half a day, because we just go to the fridge, get food, make a cup of tea, But imagine those people who are told to move because this is going to be attacked. Then they move miles and miles with empty stomach, with food. It means you won't be able to move. You won't be able to move. So then what? Because without energy, without food, none of us can operate. So imagine those people. So when I look at it, I feel so bad that people squabble about, this is anti-Semitic, this should not be said, this should be said, like this is okay, this is happening, okay, this is like wedding and all that. This is not a genocide, or this is a genocide, or don't say genocide, or say genocide, or it is genocide, or it is good, But meanwhile, the actual human rights that we need to worry about, what do we do to these people? Because these people are abused on daily basis, and I want to believe those in prison. Maybe I've seen very thin people coming out of prison when they were doing the exchange. I saw a woman, actually, an English teacher, who was in one of the prison. She was sexually violated. So, because the more, look, I don't mean, I'm not comparing anything, but you remember when they said the Nazi were in power, most German people went on about their way, their way of life. They were going to beaches. We see the pictures. They were doing this because some of them say they did not know what was happening. They did not know. Maybe they say, if we had known, we would have done something. If we had known, even the West also say, we didn't know that even when they went to the Olympics of 1936, we did not know. We always saw was this nice country, people. We did not know. So obviously, you don't know. But this time now we know, because we are seeing it on the news. There are people, they are brave men and women who are on the ground. Some of them have died somewhere. Some will yet to be killed. Some not yet to be killed, but they will be murdered because they are in this war zone, and they are in places where everyone is associated with either being Hamas or Hezbollah. Like that woman who was murdered, and they said help. They denied her help for this female journalist. And they said, apparently she worked for a newspaper that It's associated with Hezbollah. But so is that more important than saving a human life? Is that more important? How about the soldiers who are hacking, who are raping, who are hacking, who are doing all these things in their IDF, and they are supposed to be official soldiers of a country? How about what they are doing? But this woman, she is associated, and what was the evidence? Because would you say, oh, that journalist, oh, let's just leave her because she's associated, without even thinking about how she's gonna die bleeding in pain, and just knowing she's there but not doing anything because you think she's associated with a terrorist organization. That's that. I have no words for that. So that's what it has made us to be. We've made to be so not cruel at each other, and empathetic, if that exists, and just really enablers and observers of violence. Enablers of violence. I don't want to be an enabler of violence. I don't want to be like an observer of violence. I don't want to be a bystander of violence, because it's still not. It does not make you less violent. Like these people who are watching a dog abusing a man. It does not make them any better human beings. They're even worse than whatever they're trying to accuse of Iran. They are worse than that.